The reason billionaires like the idea of you and I voting with our wallets is that there's like 11 billionaires, but they have all the dollars. And so if it's $1, one vote, they win every time. But if it's one person, one vote, they lose every time.
Live from the under construction Stripper News headquarters in the Champagne Room, here's my interview with Cory Doctorow. Cory Doctorow is a science fiction author, a journalist, and an activist. You can find him at craphound.com. I want to bring it back to this idea of Canadian sovereignty being threatened by the American ownership of so many of the digital places that we exist in on the internet. And this whole idea of elbows up in Canada being strictly an economic idea, that like our only power as Canadian citizens is really as consumers. The only way to hit back at America is with our dollar. And
yeah, drink shitty rye instead of delicious bourbon.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and how jailbreaking plays into how we can actually assert our sovereignty as a nation.
Yeah. So I think you're right. You know, we have this idea broadly that all of our problems can only be solved as consumers, right? We've all heard that we can vote with our wallets. I hate to tell you this, you can't vote with your wallet. You know, the reason billionaires like the idea of you and I voting with our wallets is that there's like 11 billionaires, but they have all the dollars. And so if it's $1, one vote, they win every time. But if it's one person, one vote, they lose every time. So Ted Rogers would really like you to vote with your wallet. You know, there is such a thing as like a boycott. And there is such a thing as competition enforcing discipline on firms, but you have to have real competitors, right? Like the tech companies, they're not really competitors. The largest source of income that Apple has, the single largest payment it receives every year, it's also the single largest expense that Google has, because Google bribes Apple $20+ billion every year not to make a search engine, right?
Wow.
And Meta and Google, right? They have a secret collusive arrangement codenamed Jedi Blue that was revealed during the antitrust case against them, where they rigged the ad market. So publishers got less money, advertisers paid more money.
Boys, the Champagne Room is under construction, but just you wait. We need your help, your money to contribute to our Champagne Room. Right now, it's not the Champagne Room, it's the construction room, but soon it'll be the Champagne Room, and we're going to need your money in there too. And that's what we're going to do to your wood if you don't contribute to Stripper News. Like, comment, subscribe, baby. Stripper News!
These companies, they're not really competitors. They're kind of frenemies. In the same way that like Galen Weston was able to get all the other big grocery chain owners to get together and do the most Les Mis ass thing imaginable and affects the price of bread, right? Sure, I mean, technically they compete, but they don't really compete, right? They're really like on the same side here. And, or, you know, all the grocers like dropping hazard pay for people who worked in the grocery store on the same day. Are you telling me that these are really competitors? You know, they're collaborators. So it's very hard to have economic power when you don't have competition. And it's even harder when your boycott consists of just like agonizing in the checkout aisle about which products you should buy. That's not a boycott, right? That's just a waste of your time, you know. But there are ways that we can assert our sovereignty that go beyond consumption choices and that actually establish real consumption variance, real consumption, a spectrum of consumption choices that aren't just like Coke or Pepsi, right? So, you know, the fact that like you have to care about which social media network that someone's on before you can send them a message is about as weird and antiquated as having to care whether someone's on CompuServe or AOL before you could send them a message. It's pretty throwback to be doing this shit. So we could reverse engineer these devices, these systems, these services, and add this back in. And rather than like trying to push the companies around, which is really hard, we could just allow Canadian technologists to fill the void. it's the difference in some ways between redistribution, right? So think about things like the digital services tax that Mark Carney just scrapped, where he said, you've stolen a bunch of money from Canadians. You don't pay tax on it. I'm going to make you pay tax on it. And the tech companies said, I'm going to get my big brother. And Trump showed up and said, you can't do this. And Mark Carney said, okay, sure, I can't do this. Right? So that's redistribution. They stole some money. We're going to make them give some of it back. Or the thing we did with the link tax, right? Where we said to Facebook and Google, you're screwing up the advertising market. You're cheating. We're going to make you pay to link to the news and have places where people can talk about the news. First of all, that was kind of a crazy idea because it is not a negative to the news that you can find it and talk about it. News you can't find or talk about is a secret. It's not the news. But, there is something they were stealing, which is money. Like 51 cents out of every ad dollar goes to Facebook and Google. And 30 cents out of every app dollar goes to Google and Apple. And even if you have subscribers on social media, the media bosses will charge you money to reach your own subscribers. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Sex workers on Twitter complain about this justifiably all the time. And so by saying we're going to allow you to keep stealing from us, but we're going to make you give some of it back, we're doing redistribution. And that's pretty ineffective. For one thing, it didn't work, right? Facebook was like, great, we just won't link to the news. But for another, wouldn't it be better if we just made them stop stealing? So, rather than Facebook not being, being ordered to pay for links, right? We could have, when Facebook dropped the news, we could have allowed Canadian firms to reverse engineer the Facebook app and make an alternative Facebook client that blocked all the ads, blocked all the algorithmic suggestions, and put news back in if you wanted it, right? Basically doing to Facebook what Facebook did to, MySpace. And that would be a very valuable app. There's probably people all over the world who would pay for it. You could export that app everywhere. You could export it to Americans. Americans would love it. They pay you for it. If they're going to buy reasonably priced pharmaceuticals from us by mail, they'll definitely buy software from us over the internet. That's a really good export market. Doing this to app stores, it's incredible, right? We're never going to have another Research in Motion. But Research in Motion, that was a tough business. You had to make a lot of electronics, which is expensive and high risk. If you just go into business providing alternative app stores for the iPhone with alternative payment processors, Apple makes $100 billion a year processing payments at 30 cents on the dollar, right? So we could jailbreak the iPhone, sell the jailbreak to everyone in the world who wants to offer an app store, charge 10 cents on the dollar instead of 30 cents, or 3 cents on the dollar rather than 30 cents on the dollar to process transactions, make $10 billion a year, and everybody gets a better service, and performers on Patreon don't lose 30 cents out of every dollar they spend to Tim Cook so that he can give a little participation trophy to Donald Trump in the White House, right? So that's I think that's a good business. I think it's a good national sovereignty story. And I think it gets American tech out of the Canadian experience. It lets us keep the parts that are useful, but throw away the parts that aren't. The way that we used to have, 70% of Canada lives within, I think it's 100 kilometers of the US border. And our broadcast law used to allow our cable operators to suck in American broadcast stations from over the border and then put Canadian ads in the broadcast, right? Their margin is your opportunity.
Stripper news. Buy our merch. Tip us. Tip a girl. Come on. Don't make me look so cute without giving me a tip. Stripper news. Exactly. I want to ask you quickly about something you just mentioned, about the news ban on Meta. And I'm curious, now it's been about 2 years. It was happened in 2023. What impact do you think that has on Canadian democracy for there to be a lack of access on social media to news as far as a misinformation distribution standpoint, but also on our sovereignty? Yeah,
well, so, the far right services, Ezra Levant doesn't have a hard time distributing on Facebook, right? It's just this, and I'm not going to pretend that the CBC and Global and NCTV are great sources of news that don't also, give a free ride to the Irvings and the Westons and the other Canadian oligarchs. But, they're not making up bullshit about refugees sacrificing goats in motels, which is a thing that Levant has done, right? Or his media outlet has done. They're not fascists and fascist sympathizers. So yeah, it's definitely warping our discourse. And, one of the things that alternative clients have done in the past that have been really successful and found an enormous foothold for is taken away algorithmic suggestions and created more user-controlled versions, more user control over those algorithms. So in 2024, a couple of teenagers reverse engineered Instagram, and they made an app for iOS and Android called OG app. And so the first thing we do is like pop up a little browser window to log you into Instagram. And then when Instagram sent back what's called the session key, which is the thing that lets it know that you've logged in successfully, they'd like steal the session key out of the browser, stick it in the app. And then the app would ask Instagram for everything it was about to show you. And it would throw away all the suggestions. It would throw away all the ads. It would throw away all the 3-month-old boosted content that was getting a lot of clicks. And it would just show you the things that you'd asked to see, recent things from people you followed, right? And it wouldn't send any data back to Instagram. So Instagram, if you like run a virtual Android phone in a laptop and a desktop, and then hook it up to a protocol analyzer and install the Instagram app and watch the traffic between that virtual phone and the Instagram servers, it's everything. Right? Like every time you slow down while you scroll, it's making note of it. It's like grabbing data off the accelerometer, which is the thing that tells you like whether you're holding the phone like this, or whether you've dropped it or whatever. So it's like noticing if you're like changing the angle you're holding the phone at. Just continue. But plus your location, your IP address, all this other stuff that can let it make inferences about like who you're near and who you're with. Two people with the same outward IP address are on the same local area network, so they're probably in the same building. All this stuff that they're grabbing. And what OG app did was send none of that information. The only information it would send to Instagram is stuff you explicitly wanted Instagram to know. So if you liked something or commented on it, it would send the like or the comment. So within a day, this app was in the top 10 of both app stores. That night, Meta sent a takedown notice to Apple and Google, and they removed it. And it tells you that there's a huge appetite for this. People want to follow the things that they follow. Sometimes they like suggestions, but they want to be in charge of those suggestions. They don't want to have it crammed down their throat. In the same way that they don't want their UI redesigned to take every button they normally press and replace it with an AI button, right? They want to be in control of their technology. Even if they don't want to like change the technology themselves. And this is getting back to where we started, where yeah, you have some sex workers who are like super technical and you have others that aren't. But like, if you're in a milieu with people who are technical and who care about your well-being, they'll help you solve your problems, right? You don't need to be technical yourself. You don't need to like be an electrician to get solar on your roof. You just need to live in a society where if you'd rather have solar, you can get solar on your roof. You don't need to be a hacker to block the ads in the app. You just need to live in a society where it's okay for someone to give you that tool.
Okay, perfect place to end.
You're going to have to tip these little ladies down here at Stripper News so they could do more undercover coverage. Link in bio.
Cute.
Stripper News.
Stripper News.